Hey guys, Chop here. Everybody who plays Genshin knows that there are many problems with it, most notably its lack of gameplay loops, which popular YouTuber slash streamer Tectone is very vocal about. For those unaware, a gameplay loop is an activity in a game that can be repeated over and over and over again. The main reason the community is demanding one is because the late game of Genshin is about as dry as your non-existent girlfriend around you, and quite simply put, if there was a replayable game mode, it would give us something to do. So, if Tectone is asking for this, then why is he actually wrong, as my title suggests? Let's take a look at one of his more recent videos, where he reacts to a video by Chill with Asta, and he suggests this gameplay loop be added to the game.
I feel like Spiral Abyss should be get to 12 to get all of your rewards, and then you have an infinite floor where each floor starts getting 10% harder, or X amount, 5%, 10% harder, maybe a spike every now and then with randomized elements that allows you to progress infinitely until you hit a wall. And that way you can test your account by seeing if you can get past the next wall and the next wall and the next wall, kind of like a survival wave mode.
Now, it doesn't seem like the worst idea in the world. I'd quite happy to see it added to the game, but it does feel very flawed and very specific to a minute section of the player base. I'm going to first of all critique his idea, and then I'm going to suggest a new one that the community can maybe get behind if it seems good, and maybe see some real change to the game. Oh, that's so copium. Okay, jokes aside, the Spiral Abyss is actually quite difficult to 36 star for most players. The game is completely balanced with the idea of players being able to beat the Abyss, and not necessarily 36 star. Even if the balancing is poorly done, all the characters and artifacts are set up with stats being made to beat these sorts of enemies, nothing really beyond that. It takes a lot of constellations of 5-star characters and best in slot weapons to be able to 36 star the Abyss. I'm heavily amongst the 55 to 58 AR player range, and it is very rare that one of us can actually 36 star the Abyss. It's usually 33, 34, sometimes 35, but again, it's quite rare to actually be able to do that. So, with that being said, any content harder than the Abyss is kind of only beneficial to whales or dolphins or the players who have thrown so much of their life away into this stupid, worthless waifu collector game that their free-to-play stays is basically of the same value as Clay. Sorry. An endless abyss like this would be fun to see added to the game, because at the very least gives some content on Twitch and YouTube to watch, which is kind of dead right now. It would be fun to see Tectone go as far as he can, even if I have no chance at it myself. Although, what happens when he actually does it? Like, he gets all the way to floor 19, dies, tries again, and... still floor 19. Okay, just try again, and maybe he'll do it this time. Still 19. The biggest factor in a gameplay loop is the variables. If you were too busy jacking off to Ganyu Hentai to pay attention to your secondary school science class, then let me give you the definition of variables real quick. A factor that is liable to vary or change. Most of the time with infinite gameplay loops, like let's say Valorant or League of Legends, then you don't tend to have many variables actually. There's a selection of maps and agents that change, but otherwise the game really only has one massive variable. The opponent. The opponent is always different and challenging and is changing, and it keeps these games fresh because it always gives you something new and something to adapt to. With Tectone's idea, these variables could be the enemies that you play, or they could be new team compositions you use, or new additions to the game like new characters that let you go further than you could before. But the problem is with that, is that free-to-play players still are going to struggle, because you can't get these new characters reliably, and you can't really just have a bunch of different new characters as well that you can use all these different team comps with. You're kind of stuck with whatever 5 stars you wish for. You may have Kazuha and Raiden Shogun, but you don't have 25-star characters you can switch in and out of for these team comps. This is the sort of content that is unviable for free-to-play players, and really only suits whales or dolphins or that kind of thing. The only real variable here for free-to-play endgame players like myself and the vast majority of the community is which enemy you face. Will it be an Abyss Herald or an Abyss Lector this time? Ooh, who knows? It's not that exciting. Most players would just watch YouTubers and streamers play it to see how far they could go, and maybe they'll beat their record every few weeks. But it's really not that exciting, and I don't think it will really give too much content even for these endgame players who can complete it. So what about the vast majority of us endgame players being edged by Hoyoverse like the dirty sluts we are, waiting for the next region to explore, only to finish too quickly like you did when you lost your virginity? I'm kidding. You play Genshin, you've never lost it. Anyway, we need content that the vast majority of endgame players can actually complete. Something similar in level of difficulty to the Abyss, but maybe something a bit more replayable. There's an old Tectone video where he played Goose and another one where he played Tenha in a co-op Spiral Abyss challenge. And honestly, the comments of that video shared a very similar sentiment. It was really fun to watch, and I don't know why Hoyoverse haven't added this to the game in some capacity. I don't think it should be in the way that they did it in the video. It should be a bit more properly done, and I think there's some ways you could actually do this with some new mechanics. You can't really do PvP in Genshin, it's not that kind of game, but you could have players compete in PvE challenges against each other. I am personally in favour of a ranked system, which I think probably is my most controversial point here, but I think it's still probably worth it. I think that a good addition to the game would be a level like the Abyss, where you complete with 1 or 2 teams, maybe even more, and you have to defeat enemies in maybe about 5 minutes of non-stop combat. There'll be a fixed number of enemies, so that is probably about the most fixed state this kind of game mode would be in. And you have to try and beat it before some opponent that you get matched up against. If you win, you go up a rank. If you lose, you go down. There doesn't even have to be a ranked system. I just think it would be better personally. The biggest difference is you're not doing this in a fixed time. You're doing this in a variable time, unlike the Abyss, which is judged by another player's ability, and you have to compete against that to see who's better. You could have rewards added to the game because of this as well. You could have primos like you do in the Abyss, when if you go up ranks maybe you get some. If you win a certain amount of games, you get some primos. You could even do cosmetics if you're not in favour of getting primos like Tectone.
The rewards from the leaderboards would only be free-to-play accessible rewards, like, you know, Mystic Enhancement, or maybe you could do a little bit of more on some EXP books, but nothing crazy like Primo Gems. That's what I would do.
Which I think personally is kind of ridiculous because the Abyss gives you primos, and that is judged by skill. So I feel like this is also something like that. I know that it's not all a skill because there is obviously whales, pay to win. I get that, but there is a level of skill to it, obviously. So if you don't want primos added to this kind of game mode, you could have maybe a glider, or maybe a player banner, and you could get this, who knows, once every time you hit a rank for the first time, or maybe it's based on the peak rank you get whenever the battle pass ends. This kind of thing could be some fun little rewards to kind of show off and have a bit of fun with it. That's my suggestion for a new Genshin game mode that gives endgame content to players. However, I will recognise some problems with it. I am quite aware that it will be annoying to go up against players so much better than you that there's no hope, and the rank system won't always be able to address that. So we will have to have a new way to matchmake in addition to just getting someone a similar rank to you. You could do something with constellations, like if you count up all the 5-star constellations, characters and weapons you have, then get someone with a similar number to that for you, and that way you all have a similar number of 5 stars. However, also that could not work sometimes because if you lose a lot of 50s, you might be in a bit of a tricky situation there. But I think that would be a good one. It could be as simple as finding someone the same AR as you, and just having someone in 2 AR-58 players of the same rank going up against each other could potentially work. Maybe instead you also have a similar damage per second in this game mode as another player, and that's kind of the sort of matchmaking system you're going with. There's a few options you can go with, and there's more. These are just kind of off the top of my head factors that I think could be good. There is also kind of a mechanic issue with the game mode that I will recognise. Do they show the enemies beforehand? If not, then kind of the teams that are going to be just good on average against all enemies are really going to be overused. The typical Kazuha, the typical Bennett, the typical Raiden, these characters that are just really good against basically anybody. And so these characters are going to get overused, and these characters are just going to get meted even more, and that would be a little bit annoying. So they probably should show the enemies beforehand anyway. And even if they don't, then you kind of should have teams that are good against all these different kind of enemies anyway. It is kind of just a generally good thing to do in the game, although it will kind of leave some characters in the dust. The other fix for it could be taking a page out of their own book. There was past game modes where you could cycle through 2 characters at a time every few seconds, and it would encourage you to use so many new characters in kind of short bursts, and it was a lot of fun. They could do that in this game mode. I think that could be also quite good, instead of just having it similar to the Abyss setup with the teams. Overall, despite the few flaws this idea clearly has, it's not like you have to play it. So when you do complain about it being pay to win, the game is pay to win anyway, and it's not like you have to play it. If you don't like that it's pay to win, don't play. It at least gives content to players who want to put up with that. It is just something to do. I'd love to know what you guys think, and if you have any critiques of the idea or ideas of your own, feel free to share them in the comments. I'd love to hear them. It's always fun to see kind of theories on what game modes could be good in the game and what improvements there could be, even though it's MiHoYo, or HoYoverse, sorry. It's not like they're going to add them. But maybe this is something the community could get behind, and maybe force HoYoverse to actually make this change. I don't know if this idea could ever come to fruition. The community would really have to back it. But if it does, I think it would be fun. We can play our games to test ourselves, the general player base, and we can watch YouTubers and streamers test their limits as high as possible, get the highest ranks against each other, and you'll see these likes of Tenha and Tectone going up against each other in ranked, and seeing just how good they are against each other. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this one, then maybe you'll enjoy some other videos I've done, like where I spend 100 fragile resin on Genshin to see if the maths holds up, or my Genshin AMV that I'm honestly quite proud of. I also have funny moments videos on Genshin and other games too, in case you're interested. So I'd really appreciate if you check those out, but until next time, chop out, bye.